Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. In the tutorial video, all the basic techniques about developing Android applications using Kotlin are explained. If you watch the video in order without skipping, you will start developing your own mobile applications. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I answer all your questions within 24 hours.
Create a Kotlin file to design a simple Android application. Select an empty project. Enter the project name. Set extensions from Gradle file. Run the empty project and check the Android phone. If you can't see the Android phone, check your setup file and start the setups again. Let's start the design. In Show System UI mode, we can see how the design will look on the phone. This is an advantage for us. Let's add 3 plain texts. We will ask the user for name, age, and occupation information with plain texts. Create a button to save. Create a text box to show the information on the application home screen when the button is pressed. Delete the names found in 3 plain text, and we will use the hint command instead. We will understand better what the hint command does when we run the application. Specify ID to access and process plain texts. Use hint property in plain texts. Specify the name onClick to assign the button a task. We will use it when assigning a task to the button in the main file. To access the information text, specify the ID and change its text. After completing the design, click the Infer Constraints button and run the program. As we can see, our design is complete. Let's start writing the code to assign a task to the button and display the information we receive from the user on the screen. Define variables at the beginning of the file. You can enter the user's age as a string instead of a number. Because of this, the program crashes. We will use a function to avoid this. That's why we define age this way. Let's assign the button. For this, we will use the name onClick that we gave the button before. Sync the variables we defined to plain text variables. When defining the age, we asked it to convert the age to int or null. If the expression is null, give an error message to the information text. If there is a number instead of null, send the information to the information text. Run the program. We made a little mistake earlier. Although this problem does not affect the correct operation of the application, let's change the surname instead of age using the hint method. Run the program again and check the application. In this lesson, we designed a simple Android application. You can develop different projects with what you have learned. Let's start with the calculator design. By clicking the Show System UI button, we can see how the Android application will appear on the phone. This is an advantage for us when designing. We will use 2 plain texts to enter numbers. Delete the texts. Specify ID to access plain texts while writing code. This is how we can use the numbers we get from the user. Add 4 buttons to perform mathematical operations. Change the text of the buttons. Add a text to see the calculation results. Delete and change the name. Specify the ID to access the result text. Click the Infer Constraints button for the design to appear in the phone app as you designed it. Run your app and test how it will look on the phone. We have completed our design. Let's start coding our project. Specify the on-click names to assign tasks to the buttons. We need to specify different on-click names to assign a separate task to each button. We will use the on-click names we have determined to assign tasks to the buttons. We will create 4 functions to assign tasks to our 4 buttons. Let's create 2 variables inside the function. We will use IDs to access plain texts when creating variables. We convert it to string first and then to null or double. The reason for this is to prevent our Android application from crashing if the user presses any of the buttons without entering a value in the plain text that should be entered. Likewise, we specified a value in the second digit. If A and B variables are null, we create an error message so that the program does not crash. This error message will appear in the result text. If the variables are not null, the calculation will be done, and we will see in the result text. Instead of recreating all other functions, we can only change mathematical expressions with the copy and paste method. Run the program and test it. Make sure the program shows an error message instead of crashing when you enter a null value. Don't forget to develop this project. You can develop your other Android applications by following the project steps carefully. You first need to make the Gradle extension settings. Sync the extension after adding it. Let's create a new activity. Select an empty activity as in the first activity. The code and design part of our second activity has been added to our project file. Add a text to the design section of our first activity. Set your name, size, and alignment. Add a button to go to the second activity. Set the name of the button. Set name to use onClick property. In the second activity, we will use the same objects while designing. You can copy-paste. Replace the name of the text you copied with the second activity. Change the text of the button and its onClick name to go to the first activity. Our first stage design has been completed. Let's start coding our project. In the code section of the first activity, let's use the onClick property of the button we created to go to the second activity. For this, create a function in the code part of the first activity. It gives an error because the view file is not in our project. Mouse click on View and press Alt and Enter simultaneously and import. In the design part of the first activity, add the name of the onClick property to the function. Use the intent method to go to the second activity when the button is pressed. Call the intent method we created. For data saving, end the first activity while going to the second activity. We will do the same method in the second activity as we did in the first activity. Create a return function. Add the onCreate name of the button you created in the second activity design to the function. Create a variable using the intent property. Indicate that you are going to the first activity. Start the intent feature. End the second activity when we go to the first activity for data saving. Run the program and check the activity visits using the buttons. Let's transfer data between activities. Let's add 2 plain texts to the design of our first activity to get the name and surname from the user. Delete the plain texters' names and use the hint feature to keep it handy. Specify the ID to access the texts. Don't forget to press the Infer Constraints button after the design of the first activity is finished. Create 2 variables and save the name and surname we want from the user in the variables. Send it to second activity with keyword and variable using putExtra method. In the second activity, create the intent variable. Save 2 variables in the second activity using first and last name keywords. We will replace the text of the second activity with the first and last name we get from the user, using the ID. Run the program, enter any name and surname you want in the text boxes, and go to the second activity. In the second activity you will see the first and last name. You can improve yourself by designing projects from different activities. We learned how works activities in the previous video. Let's learn about warning and toast messages in this tutorial. Let's create a toast message when the application is first opened. When the program is first opened, the codes you want to happen are written into the onCreate function. Let's create a toast message here. Let's set the text and duration of the toast message to variables. Create a toast message using the toastMakeText method. Show this toast message on the screen. Run the program and check the toast message. Let's create an alert message when the button is clicked. Construct an alert message for it. Set the text of the alert message. Create a positive button. When the positive button is clicked, I want to go to the second activity and show a toast message stating that we have moved to the second activity. For this, copy the codes at the bottom and paste them into the code line of the positive button. Now let's create a toast message. It's no different than what we did before. Show toast message on screen. Optionally, let's pause the program for 2 seconds while going to the second activity. Create negative alert button. When the negative button is clicked, we will remain in the first activity. To indicate this, let's just create a toast message and display it on the screen. We need to display the alert message, such as the toast message, on the screen. Let's run the program and test how our code works. Most of the time, we need data storage when developing an Android app. There are many methods for storing data. In this video tutorial we will learn how to store data using shared preferences. First, let's set the Gradle settings of the project. Add and sync Android app extensions in Gradle app section. Run the program and test it. While developing an Android app, you should make sure that the emulator phone is running. Let's start the design of our data storage project. By pressing the Show System UI button, we can see how the project will look on the phone. Set this before starting the design so that there are no problems later when designing. We will use plain text to get the username data entry from the user. Delete the text part and use the hint part for ease of use. I have taught the design details in detail in other videos of the playlist. Specify ID to access plain text. We will use it while writing code. Add 2 buttons. The first button is our Save button. Set the text of the button. We will use the button's onClick property while writing code. So set the onClick name. Our second button is the Delete button. We will do the same for this button. Set the text of the second button. Specify a name for the onClick property. Let's use a text view to see the data entry in the application. Set the text view size and change its text. You can adjust the size and other properties of the text what you want. Don't forget to click the Infer Constraints button after you finish the design. The design is complete. Now let's start writing code. First, let's make an application without data storage. Create a function for our Save button. Import the view property. Complete the function by checking the onClick name of the Save button. Sync the username we get from the user to a variable in the function using the ID of the plaintext. To access the text in text view, check the text view ID and create a new string using the data we received from the user. Create a function for the Delete button and check the name when clicked. Write a simple code that will delete the text when you click the Delete button. Run the program and test the application. Make a data entry and press the Save button. The information text is created according to the text we entered. Now let's test if the Delete button works. Let's save the data entry again and close the program. Let's open the program again and test whether the data exists even if the program is closed. As you can see, the data has been deleted. This is a problem, because most of the time we don't want the data to be deleted when designing an Android application. Let's try to save the data using the shared preferences method. Let's create a shared preferences variable that we will initialize later. Create a variable named username. We will use this variable to save data. Create a toast message to repeat what we learned in the previous lesson. Create a shared preferences save function. We will use our package name as the data saving address. Set it to private. Let's specify that our variable is shared preferences and create a keyword. We will save the data using this keyword. If our variable is not null, we will print a new text using this variable when the program starts. As I said before, the codes we write in the onCreate function run as soon as when the application starts. Let's create a toast message to remind user that there is no data entry when the Save button is pressed without data entry in the function of our Save button. If the user enters data, let's save this data using the keyword. The reason we want save this data is that even if the program is closed, we want to see this data when it is opened again. When the Delete button is clicked, delete the data using the keyword. Let's print the text to be empty and clear the shared preferences data. Run the program and check. As you can see, when I pressed the Save button without entering any data, it gave a toast message. Enter data and click the Save button. Test the Delete button. Save the data again. Let's close the app and open it again. As you can see, the text is not deleted because the data is saved even if the application is closed. In this video, we learned how to do a simple data storage process. But you will seldom use this method of saving data when creating the app. This is because we have to create a separate variable for each data. This doesn't make sense. Instead, we will often use SQL or other cloud data saving methods. We will learn all this information in the following videos. In this video tutorial, we will learn about counters that are often used while developing Android app. In this video, we will make two counter projects that count backwards and forwards that we can control with a button. Let's start with our first project. Set and sync Gradle extension settings of Kotlin project. Create a counter text. Adjust text and size. Set the ID to access the text. Create an object to count backwards within the onCreate function. Code to make a counter that counts down 1 by 1 from 16. Click on Object to transfer the necessary functions. We transferred two functions. In the onTick function, we will code what we want to do when the counter counts down, and in the onFinish function, we will code what we want to do when the counter counts down and reaches 0. Check the text's ID. Sync counter with text. Here we need to divide by 1000. This is because the counter is in milliseconds. When the timer has finished counting down, let's see a text indicating it has completed. Don't forget to start the counter with start. Run the program and check the operation of the counter. As you can see, the counter counts down starting from 16. When it reaches 0, we will see the text we have determined in the application. In our second project, we will control the counter with the buttons and count forward. Set the text in the design section of the project. Add two start and stop buttons to control the counter. Set the name of the buttons. Specify onClick name to assign buttons to task. Click the Show System UI button to see how the project will look on the phone. Don't forget to click the Infer Constraints button for the project design to work properly. Let's start coding our project. To create a counter, define a variable, runnable, and handler, synchronized to a 0. Since there is no handler file in our project, import it. Create the function of the Start button to assign a task to the button. View is not available in our project. Import the view file into the project. Check the onCreate ID of the Start button. Create a runnable object function. Transfer the required function from the object. We can think of the run function as a while loop. Increase the number by 1 and check the ID of the text. Show the number on the screen each time. Set the delay to 1 second. You can set any time you want for the delay. If the counter is greater than 15, create an if loop to reset it. Do not forget to write the link code. Create a function for the stop button and check the button onClick ID. Type the link code and display it on the screen. Run the program. As you can see, the counter has started counting. You can stop the counter with the stop button. Thanks to the if control, the counter will be reset if it is greater than 15. As I said at the beginning of the video, counters are often used while developing Android apps. Do not forget to develop the project. Until this video of the playlist, we learned a lot of information about developing Android app. Let's develop a simple superhero book using what we learned in this video. In addition, in this video, we will learn about the Recycler View feature that we will use frequently while developing Android applications. So let's start. Set and sync the project's Gradle extension settings. In this project, we will work with multiple activities. Create a new empty activity. In this activity, we will show the user the information of superheroes. You can choose a suitable name for it. Our code and design files were created. In previous Android application development lessons, we developed applications in the design section. In this lesson, let's try to make the design with code using HTML codes. What we code in the code file will appear instantly in the design file. Let's create an image view where we will show the images of the superheroes to the user. Make the layout settings wrap contents so that its size is fully visible. Adjust margin and constraint to determine the image view position. Let's upload a random image using the src compat feature in the design section. We made the image view adjustments. You can adjust the image view image as you want by changing the codes. Now let's create a text view. In order for the text to expand as much as we type, set the layout settings to wrap content instead of match content. Adjust text, position and font size. Adjust the layout settings to adjust the position of the text as we coded in image view. We have completed the text part where we will show the information of the superheroes. Don't forget to specify ID to assign image view and text. Let's create a recycler row where we will see the superhero names one after the other. We did not create a new activity here. We created a new file in the layout file. Pay attention to this. Encode the superhero names to be sorted vertically. Create a text and set the layout settings. You can adjust the text's appearance settings as you want. Let's work in this example using linear layout. This has many advantages. We will talk about it again in the next videos. Set the text's ID. Now let's download superhero images from the internet. You can download any photo you want. Make sure the photo is horizontal. Copy the photos to the drawable folder. Open the photos in File and make sure it works. We have completed almost all of the design part of our project. Now we can start coding. Create an array list for superhero names. Save the superhero names in order in your list. Likewise, create an array list for superheroes information. Save the information in the list in order. There is a point to note here. You have to save the information in superhero name order. In this example, we gave simple information about superheroes. You can create as long information texts as you want. Sync pictures of superheroes to variables. Note that images are now an integer. Create an array list of superhero images. Notice that the type of list array is integer. Add photos sequentially into the array list. Create a layout manager. Add the plugin and set the ID to see the Recycler View property in the main design file. Do the Recycler View sync. We need a new Kotlin class file for the project to work. Create a new Kotlin class. We will send superhero names, pictures, and information inside the class. We made a little mistake here. We'll fix that later in the video. If you've noticed, you can now fix it yourself. To use the adapter class's Recycler View property, make the adjustments in order. We need to create the superhero class inside the class. Set the superhero class's Recycler View settings. Import it as it is not in our view file. Import the functions of the adapter class. We will show the names of the superheroes to the user by using the recycler row design in the onCreateViewHolder function. In the onBindViewHolder function, we will display the information between the activities on the screen according to the position number. In the getItemCount function, we will determine how many superhero names we will display to the user. You are probably confused. You will understand better when we start coding inside functions. Create a variable from adapter class in the script file and pass superhero names, images, and information to adapter class. Error appears when sending images. We specified that the images in the adapter class will be strings. But the incoming images are integer, as I said before. Let's fix this. Create a variable using the layout inflator property in the onCreateViewHolder function and expose it in the superhero class. Show superhero names on main screen in sequence in onBindViewHolder function. When the user clicks on the superhero name, we will go to the information page. Submit superhero info and pictures info activity, along with keywords, by position number, using putExtra feature. Activate the intent variable. Specify how many names will appear in the getItemCount function. We can use the size feature for this. Synchronize superhero info to variable using these keywords in info activity. Show this info in the info text we created earlier. Likewise, import superhero images using the keyword and sync them to a variable. Note that superhero images are currently integer. We will convert these numbers to images using the bitmap feature of the Kotlin programming language. Convert integer numbers into superhero images using the bitmap feature. Show the converted bitmap to the user as an image on the screen. Finally, create a class to display the photo to the user without error. Create a variable using the companion object property. Run the program. There is a problem with the project. Let's fix this. Only one superhero name appears in the main action. Change the height property to wrapParent instead of matchParent in the recycler row layout file, and the problem will be solved. Run the program again and check. Our project is working properly. Don't forget to develop the Android application that shows superhero pictures and information. In previous lessons, we have done examples of the working of activities. In this lesson, let's make a project about fragments that are frequently used in Android app development and try to understand how it works. Set and sync extension settings in the Gradle part of the project. Control how the app will look on the phone by clicking the Show System UI button in the Design section of the main activity. Add 2 buttons to the design. When we click with these buttons, we will go to the first or second activity. Edit the text of the first and second button. As in the other examples, we will assign tasks to the buttons using the onClick property. Set the onClick names of the first and second button. In the main design, we will see the first and second fragments. Add a frame layout to a main design for this. Complete the design of the main activity of the project by clicking the Infer Constraint button. Now let's create the fragment files. Create an empty fragment for the first fragment. Create the second fragment in the same way. Delete the text in the design part of the first fragment. We will add another text to better understand how the project works. For this, we need to go to the code part of the design. We will use constraint layout instead of frame layout. This is because constraint layout is easier to use. Go to the design section and create a text view. Create a text indicating that we are in the first fragment. Adjust the font size and align settings. Go to the code part of the second fragment and do the same. We can use the text of the first fragment with a small change to the second fragment. Adjust the text of the second fragment. With these texts, we will understand that we are in the first or second fragment. Let's start the coding part of the project. We will use the onClick property of the button we created to go to the first fragment. Create a function for it. It gives an error because it is not found in our view file. Import your Vue file. Use the onClick property of the first button in the function. Create the necessary variables for the fragment settings inside the function. Sync the first fragment to a variable. Navigate to the first fragment using the transaction property. Let's do the same operations in the second fragment button. Create a function and check the name of the second function on create. Use this name in the function. Create the necessary variables for the fragment settings inside the function. Sync the second fragment to a variable. Navigate to the second fragment using the transaction property. Delete unnecessary variables and functions in the code part of the first and second fragments. Run the project. As you can see, we can navigate through the first and second fragments by clicking the buttons in the design. Note that in this project we are working with fragments rather than activities. You will often use the fragment feature when developing Android applications. We'll do lots of examples of fragments in the following tutorial videos. In this tutorial video, we will make an example of the SQLite data saving method, which is often used when developing Android applications. Set and sync the project's Gradle extension settings. As I said in the previous videos of the playlist, the codes in the onCreate function are executed when the application is running. So let's start coding the project in the onCreate function. We use try-catch concept to avoid errors in SQLite data save method. Create a database. Create a table in the database. Specify that the columns of the table we created will consist of ID, name and price. Clean the table we created first to avoid mistakes. Use the insert into method to save data inside the table. Let's save two more data in the table. By using the cursor method, we can show the data to the user on the screen or in the console. Create a cursor variable for this. Create variables to learn column indexes and display them to the user. Create an array list to save data. Note that the type of the array list is string. Create one empty string. A little later, we will save the list of arrays in this empty string. Now let's do the scanning using the while loop. Create a while loop. Convert the integer ID and price to string, and save it in the array list we created. Stop the scanning process. Create a for loop and save the information inside the array list to the empty string. Show the data saved with SQLite to the user in the console. To prevent the program from throwing an error, use the catch structure and show the error to the user. Run the program. Click the logcat tab to see the information in the console. You can type system.out in the search section to see only the information we want to show to the user with println on the screen. We can see the saved information like this. Instead of showing the information in the console, let's create a text in the Android application and show it to the user. For this, go to the design part of the main activity. Click the Show System UI button and see how the app design will look on the phone. Adjust text and ID settings. We will change the text using this ID. Adjust the size of the text to see the information better. Instead of showing the information on the console, show the information to the user on the application screen by using the text and ID we created in the design. Run the program again and check the information. As we see all the information we see on the screen. Let's add a new information using the insert into feature and check the results. Rerun the Android app and check the change. In this tutorial video, we made an example of SQLite, which is often used while developing Android app. But SQLite is not the only data saving method. Cloud saving methods called Firebase instead of SQLite are frequently used while developing Android app. We will talk about all of them in detail in the following videos of the playlist. In this video, we will make an example of menus and user permissions that are frequently used while developing an Android app. In this example, we will ask for permission to go to the user's photo gallery, and we will learn how to upload the photo from the gallery to our application. Set and sync project's Gradle settings. Create a menu file. Create a menu resource file inside the menu file. Go to the split section of the file and see the code and the design at the same time. Add an item using the code part of the design. As you can see, we have added the menu to our resource file. Run the program and test it. As you can see, the menu has not been added to our application yet because we do not synchronize. Create a function for the sync operation. Create a menu inflator variable inside the function. Sync the variable to the application design. Rerun the application and check that the menu has been added. As you can see, the menu has been added to our application. But the menu doesn't work because it doesn't have a function yet. Create an empty fragment to task the menu. In the design of the fragment, go to the split section. Delete the text inside the fragment and use constraint layout instead of frame layout. Go to the design section and add an image view. You can choose a blank image. Notice that the ID of the blank photo we selected is automatically set to image view. We will use this ID frequently during the project coding process. Click the Infer button to complete the design. In the main activities design, go to the code section. Delete the text. Add a frame layout to the design section. Click the Infer button and complete the design. Let's start coding for menu and fragment synchronization. Create a function to assign a task when an item is selected from the menu. Create the necessary variables for the fragment settings inside the function. Sync the photo insert fragment to a variable. Go to the Add Photo fragment using the transaction property. Run the application again and check the functionality of the code. As you can see, when we clicked on the item from the menu, we went to the photo adding fragment. We have to get permission from the user to go to the user's gallery and add photos. For this reason, let's ask the user for permission. For this, let's go to the manifest file and start the permission request process. Delete the codes that we do not use in the fragment files. We will use two variables to transfer photos from the gallery to the application. Let's create these variables. Create an onViewCreated function to start the photo selection process. Let's create an onClickListener function using the ID of the photo we added to the photo insert fragment. Create a function for selecting photos and permissions using the name we defined in a setOnClickListener. Let's use the ActivityLet feature to get rid of the errors in the code we wrote in the function. Use a permissions function if we haven't already gotten permission from the user. We can use the request code as one. We'll use this in a function we'll create later. The request code here does not have to be 1. You can specify a different number. If we have obtained permission from the user before, we can go directly to the gallery. For this, create a variable using intent and initialize it. Here we set our request code as 2. We'll use this later in the code. The number 2 means nothing. You can specify a different number. We can reduce the size a little to see all the codes. Create a function for getting permission. Request code 1, that is, if the permission has not been granted yet, the user will be automatically asked a question. Create a variable if allowed. Initialize this variable with the start function and go to the gallery. Here, we set the request code that we previously set to go to the gallery as 2. We have completed the permission processes by using the function request function. Create a result function. If permission is granted and the photo source is not empty, save the data. We will use the try-catch method to avoid errors. Let's also use the concept of context let to get rid of code errors. The point we need to pay attention to here is the version of the Android phone. Permission and gallery going processes are different according to Android version. We will code it separately so that the project is suitable for each phone Android version. If the Android version of the phone is greater than 28, create a resource variable and make it available for use using the decoder feature. Sync the photo using the ID of the photo that I created earlier in the photo insert fragment. Note that the image view ID here is the ID of the blank image we used in the design part of the fragment we created earlier. If the phone version is not greater than 28, we can directly access the gallery and synchronize it with the image on the phone using the ID of our image. Use the catch structure to show the user if there is any error. Run the program. Let's download 2 pictures to our artificial phone using the Chrome browser. Let's go to the photo adding fragment from the menu we added earlier in the application. Let's click on the photo. As you can see, it asks the user for permission before going to the gallery. Let's allow the application and go to the gallery. Let's choose a photo from the gallery and upload it to our application. As you can see, the photo has been uploaded to the app. Let's close the app and open it again. When we clicked on the photo icon, this time it did not ask us for permission to go to the gallery. Because we had previously coded a function in our project file that stated that we allowed it. But there is a problem that we do not see here. After uploading the photo from the gallery to the application, when the user presses the back button to return to the main activity, the application closes because it is already in the main activity. This is a problem. To solve this, navigation structure is used with fragments. Navigation is often used when developing mobile applications, not only for this problem but also because it has many advantages. In our next lesson, we will do the same for this example using navigation. After that example, you will better understand the concept of navigation and why it is often used in mobile app development. As I said in the previous video, when the user presses the back button to return to the main activity after adding a photo, the application closes because it is already in the main activity. This is a big problem. We don't want this to happen when developing Android app. That's why we often use navigation when creating an Android application project with fragments. In this video tutorial, we will solve this problem by doing the example we did in the previous lesson with navigation. Before starting the project, you can support us by following the Turtle Code YouTube channel and other social media accounts. To use navigation in our Kotlin project, we must first add the navigation libraries. We will use the Android developer website to add the navigation library to our project. I added the site address to the description of the video. Let's start the process of adding a library by going to the site address in the description of the video. First, add a description specifying the navigation version to your Gradle app file in our project. Add the necessary files to the Gradle implementation part. Sync your Gradle file. Add the necessary files to the Gradle project file. Sync your Gradle project file. Finally, we will define an ID in the Gradle app file. Add an ID to the Gradle app file and finally resync. Go to the build part of the project and make sure the library addition was successful. When you write navigation in the main activity code file, the extension should appear in your project. Let's create an empty fragment in our project. Delete the unnecessary codes from the file that we will not use for the empty fragment we created. In the design of the fragment you created, go to the code section and delete the text. Let's start the process of adding navigation to our file. Add a navigation folder to the residential folder, which is the design folder in our project. Add navigation resource file to navigation folder. Add the fragment we created and the photo attachment fragment to our navigation file. We can automatically create the necessary functions by clicking the circle icon and dragging it to the other fragment. As you can see, the IDs are generated automatically. Here we will use the ID that goes from the main fragment to the add photo fragment. Add a fragment container to the design part of the main activity. Add the main fragment we created earlier as a container. The main fragment we added here will be visible to the user when the project is opened in the main activity. Copy and paste this code in the code section of the main activity's design file. These codes are the codes that make the container work. You can find this code as text in the description section of the video. Click the Infer button and complete the design part of the main activity. Let's start the navigation coding phase. This step is almost the same as the fragment coding step. Create an if loop that indicates the item was clicked. Create an action variable. Here the action function was created automatically in the navigation section before. Start the navigation and indicate that when clicking the item icon you will go to the photo selection fragment. Write the return parameter of the function. This return parameter is a fixed parameter that comes with the function to automatically detect the item when it is selected. Run the program, go to the add photo fragment using item and add a photo. Press the phone's back key to return to the main activity. As you can see, the Android application did not close and went to the main activity. This is how we solved the problem in the previous video. In the next video of the playlist, we will make an example of Google Maps, which is often used in Android app development. In this video, we will make an example of Google Maps, which is often used when developing Android applications. If you watch the whole video, you will be able to easily add Google Maps to your Android mobile application. First, set the Gradle extension settings of the project. Sync Gradle extension settings we made. A special web address is created for each Google Map project. Your project may have a different web address. Copy the web address in your project and go to this web address in your internet browser. To go to this address and create a Google Map specific to your project, your Google account must be open in your web browser. Press Continue. Generate an API key. Copy the key created specifically for you to use in your project. Use the key you copied in your project. You can delete information rows in your project. Run your project to check your map. SIDNet is automatically set as the starting position in our project code. That's why the map started in Sydney. Let's change that. I want it to start in New York when the Map Android app is launched. For this I need the latitude and longitude of New York. I can find this out with a simple search on the internet. Now use the latitude and longitude of New York in our code. Change the variable names to suit New York. Run the program. As you can see, the map starting position is New York instead of Sydney. When the map starts, let's add the zoom feature and get closer to New York. We can use the zoom function for this. Sets the zoom setting to 15f and float data type. You can try different numbers like 10, 12. Generally, the zoom settings of the maps are 15f when developing mobile applications. Let's run it again and check if the zoom function works. As you can see, we have changed the starting position and zoom settings of the map using the latitude, longitude, and zoom properties. Let's create a Google Map Android application by improving what we have learned. Delete previous application codes. Define the two variables that we will launch later for the Google Android application in your code file. Synchronize the listener function that we will create later with the clickListener function to assign a task when click the map. To start later, set the location manager variable we defined as location service. Likewise, create an object function with the location listener variable we defined. Transfer the required function in the object. As you can see, we transferred the onLocationChanged function from within the object. In this function, when the user location changes, we will code what we want to do. First, clear the map when the user location changes. Create a variable for the new location. Create a marker indicating the new location and a title indicating it. Zoom the map to 15f scale to see the new location better. Create an address modifier variable to specify the location. Let's use the try-catch method to avoid errors when specifying a new address. Create a new address list variable using the address editor variable we created. When creating the address list variable, we take the maximum result as 1 to get the most accurate result. If the address list object is greater than 0, we can print it to the console screen. Show any error in the application to the user using the catch method. Create an if query to ask the user for permission. If the user has not yet agreed to provide location information, ask the user for this permission. Get location information using Location Manager if allowed by user. In the location information, features such as minimum time and minimum distance are requested from us. This is the sensitivity it will show to the user when the new location is marked. These values are generally preferred on the 1 millisecond and 1f scale. Create a variable for the last known location using the getListKnownLocation function. If the last known location is not null, create another variable for the last location. Create a marker for the last known location and a title that indicates it. As we did before, zoom in on the map at 15f scale to get a better view of the location. We use the manifest folder in our project file to request any permissions from the user. When starting the project, instead of an empty project, we created a Google Maps project, so the location permission from the user should be automatically added to the manifest file. Create the permission result function to create an action when the user is granted access to the user location information. If it is allowed by the user, that is, if the request code is 1, get the new location information by using Location Manager and adjusting the sensitivity properties. Notice that after the request code if query, we do 2 more similar if queries. These if queries have a similar structure and are made to avoid errors. Create an object to give a task when clicking on the new location on the map. Add the function inside the object. When clicking on the new location on the map, first clear the map. Create an address editor variable. If the location P0 is not null, define an address string variable. We will use the try-catch method to avoid errors. Get the address list using the geocoder address editor. Take the maximum result as 1 to avoid errors. If the address list is not null and the address list street name is not null, add the street name of the address to the address string. Also add the street number to the address string if the address list is not null. Use the catch method to show any error in the application to the user. Add a marker indicating the new location and add the address string to its header. Run the program and test it. The program throws an error. Let's solve this. We used the longClickListener function while creating a listener. But we used ClickListener function in listener variable. It gives an error because these two functions are not the same. Let's fix this. When creating mmap, replacing longClickListener function with ClickListener function will solve the problem. Run the program again. As you can see, when the program launches, it asks the user for permission to access the user location. Allow app to access user location. Note that the phone emulator in our app is a fictitious phone. Let's create an imaginary location by clicking here. I created Brooklyn as an imaginary location in the Map Searches section in the Location section. Click the Set Location button and create the location. Run the program again. When you run the program, your map will start at the imaginary location. Let's click on the location we want to go. Click on the marker and then click on the Directions tab. Directions will be prepared for you automatically. In addition, you can learn your user location information with the address string we created by going to the Logcat tab in the project. In this tutorial video, we made an application related to Google Maps, which is often used while developing the Android app. Do not forget to develop this application and use it in your project. In the previous videos of the playlist, we did a project with SQLite data saving method. While doing this project, I said that there are options other than SQLite data saving method. In this video tutorial we will build an online photo sharing application using Firebase, a platform developed by Google for building mobile and web applications. We will also transfer the shared photos to our application using the Picasso library. So let's start. After creating the project, set the Gradle extension settings. We need to add the Firebase Picasso libraries that we will use when making a photo sharing application. Let's start the process of adding the Picasso and Firebase libraries to our project. We have to transfer the necessary libraries to use Firebase in our project. From this website we can transfer libraries to our project. I will add all the websites we will use to transfer the libraries in the descriptions of the video. You can easily go to these sites from the description section of the video. Let's define an ID for the Gradle app file in our project. Add the authentication libraries to the project file. When adding libraries, we have to specify their versions. You can see the versions of the libraries in the latest version section of the table. Versions of libraries may change over time. If you watch the video at different times, the versions will probably be updated. It's a good idea to use the latest version. Add the Cloud Firestore library with its latest version to the project file. Add Cloud Storage Library to Gradle app file to save photos and texts. Go to Gradle project file and add required class path definition to use Google services. Now add the Picasso library that we will use for photo transfer to the Gradle app file in our project. As I said before, I have added all the internet addresses we used to the descriptions of the video. You can easily access these sites from the description section of the video. Sync the libraries and IDs we added to Gradle app and Gradle project files. After syncing, you should see the text build successful in the build section of the project. If you see this, the library adding process has been completed successfully. After adding the library, let's start the Firebase and project synchronization process. Go to the Firebase website. As I said before, you can easily go to this website by clicking the link in the description of the video. You have to sign in with your Google account to do the next steps. If you don't have a Google account, you can create one for free. Go to the console from the website. Add a project. You need to enter a project name. You can choose any project name. Click the Continue button. When you upload your Android application to the Play Store, you can enable Google Analysis to see user data. Click the Continue button. Accept the terms and click the Create a Project button. After the project creation process is completed, press the Continue button. Our project has been created. Now let's sync Firebase with our Kotlin project. To do this, click the Android button. Enter the package name of the Kotlin project. You can find the package name in the main activity code file. Register your Kotlin project. We need to add a file to our Kotlin project for Kotlin project and Firebase synchronization. To do this, download the file to your computer. In the Project Files section, replace the Android option with the Project option. Transfer the downloaded file into the app file. The Google Services file contains the information of our Firebase and Kotlin project that we created. I suggest you review the file. Go to the website and click the Next button. It reminds us that we need to add the libraries we added at the beginning of the project. We already added these libraries to the Gradle app and Gradle project files after creating the project. The point you need to pay attention to here is the Google extension. Make sure that the Google extension is added in the repositories section of your project's Gradle project file. Click the Next button. Click Continue to Console button and go to Console. With this method, we can synchronize our Kotlin project with our Firebase project. Let's start the project coding process. Go to the design part of the main activity and delete the text. Click the Show System UI button to make the design look as it appears on the phone. Create a text to request email from the user. Specify an ID to access the email text. Use the hint method to assign a name to the text. Create a text to request the user for a password. Use the hint method for ease of use. Set an ID to access the password. Create a button to log into the application. Determine your name. Specify an onClick function name to assign a task to the button. Create a button to log out the application. Specify an onClick function name to assign a task to the button. Change the text of the button. We will change the onClick function name and text of the log out button later. Create a menu file in the residential folder. Create a menu source file inside the menu file. To see the code and design at the same time in the menu design, go to Split section. Here we will create an item. Specify an item ID and title. We will use this item to share photos. The item created in the design section is shown to us simultaneously. Create an item to log out of the application user account. Set the title and ID of the item. Go to the code part of the main file. When the user logs into the current photo sharing applications such as Instagram, user does not have to log in again even if he closes the application. To do this, we will start the coding process from the onCreate function. As I said in previous lessons, the codes in the onCreate function are executed as soon as the application starts. Create a Firebase auth variable that we will initialize later. Do auth and Firebase sync. Create a variable specifying the current user using the auth parameter. If the current user is not null, we want it to go directly to the public photo sharing activity so that even if the user closes the application. For this, let's create an empty public photo sharing activity. We will use the intent method to go directly to the public photo sharing activity when the user has logged into their account beforehand. For this, create an intent variable that goes to the shared photo sharing activity. Activate the intent variable you created. End the main activity for data saving. In order to log into the application, we need to assign a task to the login button. We will use the onClick function name of the login button to assign the task. We will use the ID name of the email text to reach the email entered by the user. Convert the email to text and then to string data type. Let's do the operations we do in the email and the password entered by the user. Likewise, let's convert it to text first and then to string data type. In this way, we can use the email and password variables within the function. Call the sign-in function to log into the user account with the email and password the user entered. We will assign the sign-in function to log into the application. If the login task to the application is successful, create a variable specifying the current user. Let's show a welcome toast message after the user logs into their account. Let's create an intent variable as we did before and go to the public photo sharing activity. Let's activate the intent variable we created. Let's end the main activity for data saving. If an error occurs for any reason while logging into the application, let's create a function to show it to the user. Let's create a toast message inside the function to indicate the error to the user. Create a function to task the logout button. I said earlier that we will replace the logout button. We made a mistake while creating the logout button in the design part. Let's change the text of this button to register button instead of logout and fix the onClick function name. Let's use the onClick function name to assign a task to the register button we just created. Create a variable in the function and synchronize it with the email entered by the user. Likewise, create a variable and sync it with the password the user entered. Create a user creation function within the register function. If the register is successful, create an intent variable to go to the public photo sharing activity. Activate the intent variable. End main activity for data saving. If an error occurs in the register process, generate a toast message to show the error to the user. Now let's create an activity for the user to share photos. In this activity we will access the user gallery and transfer the photo from the gallery to the application. For this, we will do the permissions in the manifest file later. Go to the design part of the user photo sharing activity. Let's transfer a blank image to the design part of the user photo sharing activity to go to the user gallery. We will use the onClick function to assign a task when the image view is clicked. Specify a name for the onClick function. Create a plain text to request a photo comment from the user. Specify the ID to access the plain text. Use the hint method for ease of use. You can enlarge the photo a little to see it better. Create a button to share user's photo and comment. Set the text of the button. Specify the onClick function name to assign a task to the button. Don't forget to click the Infer button to complete the design. Go to the code part of the user photo sharing activity we created. Create a variable for the selected image from the gallery. Transfer the URI file that is not in our project to the project. We will use the bitmap method in the photo transfer and sharing process. Create a variable for the bitmap. Create a variable to use the Firebase storage feature. Create a variable to use the database feature in Firebase. Create a variable to use the Firebase auth feature. As I said before, the codes in the onCreate function are executed as soon as the activity launch. Sync the storage variable with Firebase here. Sync the database variable with Firebase. Likewise, sync the auth variable with Firebase. Create a function to task the share button. Import view file to code file. As the function name, we will use the onClick function name of the share button that we have created before. When saving a post to Firebase, we have to give the post a name. It is very unreasonable to use a different variable each time a post is shared. Therefore, we will generate a random number and use this random number when saving post to Firebase. Create a variable to create a random number inside the share button function. Save the photo in JPEG format. Specify a storage reference. Create an image reference variable for storage. If the selected image is not null, create a function to put it in the file using the image's reference. Create a variable inside the function and save the uploaded image to Firebase. If the URL of the uploaded image is successful, sync the image URL with a variable. Create a variable and synchronize it with the current user's email. Create a variable and sync using the ID of the comment text. Create a variable and sync it with the current date to specify the date of the shared image and comment. Create a post hash to save all the data. Submit the address of the image in post hash. Note that we use keywords from the shared photo sharing activity when submitting the image address. Send the email of the shared account into post hash using the keyword. Post the post comment in post hash using the keyword. Submit the current photo and comment post date in post hash. If all submissions are successful, create a post collection. If the task is successful, finish it. Create a function to show the user if an error occurs for any reason. Create a toast message to show the error to the user. Create a function to show an error toast message to the user if an error occurs before the download starts. Create a function to assign a task when the user clicks on the blank image to add a photo from the gallery and use the name onClick in the function. If no permission has been obtained from the user, we have to get permission from the user. For this, let's start the process of obtaining permission to access the user's gallery in our project's manifest file. Go to the manifest file of the project. Start the process of asking the user for permission to access the gallery. In this function, we used the request code as 1, since the gallery is not yet granted access. Request permission to access the gallery with the request permission function if the user has not yet been granted permission. Create a variable to access the gallery directly if the user has permission. Initialize the variable you created for permission to access the gallery. We used the request code as 2, as the gallery was granted access. Let's start the coding process according to the permission results. We will use the permission results function for this. If the user has not yet been granted access to the gallery, create a request question to access the gallery. Create a variable to access the gallery if the gallery access request question is allowed by the user. Initialize the variable you created. We set the request code as 2, since the gallery was granted access. If the user has already given permission to access the gallery, we do not need to ask for permission again. Create another result function to specify this. Let's check the user permission again so that there are no errors. If allowed, start the data transfer process. In order for the application we designed to work on every mobile phone, we will make different codings according to the versions of the phone. Create an if query for this. Since the build file is not in our project, import it into the project. Create a resource variable if the Android phone version is greater than 28. Use the source variable with the imagerDecoder function using the bitmap method. Transfer the selected image to the blank image we created in the design section. If the version of the Android phone used is less than 28, we can access the gallery directly. Let's synchronize the variable to the source and synchronize it with the blank image we created in the design part. Our process of obtaining permission and adding photos is now complete. Let's use the Recycler View property in the design part of the public photo sharing activity. Set the Recycler View ID. After set Recycler View ID, don't forget to click Infer button. Let's start the coding process in the code part of the public photo sharing activity. Create a variable to use the Firebase authorization feature. Create a variable to use the Firebase data feature. Create an array list variable to show posts using the Recycler View property. Here we need to create a class called Post. Let's create a class named Post in the project file. Let's define the email, comment and photo variables in the class we just created. To use the Recycler View feature, create a recycler variable that we will initialize later. Here we need an adapter. Create a new Kotlin class in the project file. Import the array list we created earlier into this class. Specify that the new class we create should have the Recycler View property. Create another post holder class inside the class. The post holder class has been created. Transfer the necessary functions in the new adapter class. We transferred 3 functions to our adapter class. We'll use them to let you use the Recycler View properties. We will begin the coding process later in these functions. Now let's add the Recycler View properties to the post holder class we just created. Since there is no view file in the class we created, transfer it. Let's go to the public photo sharing activity and sync the auth variable with Firebase. Sync database variable with Firebase. We'll create a function a little later to get the data. Create a layout manager variable. We will use the variables we created in the coding process. You will understand better after using it how it works. Let's synchronize the layout manager variable we created to the public photo sharing activity. Let's synchronize the class we created as adapter with the Recycler View adapter. Let's mention that we will use the Recycler View adapter feature in the public sharing activity. Now let's create a getInformation function and synchronize it with the function name that gives the error. We will transfer data to this activity using the keywords from the photo sharing activity. Create a collection named post in the information function. With the descending command used in the SQLite programming language, we can see the posts shared by users by date. If any error has occurred, create a toast message to notify the user of the error. If there are no errors and the data is not empty, sync it to a variable as a document. Clear the post list. Now we will transfer the user's email, comment and image as a string using keywords. We can start with email. Create and sync a variable for the email. Create and sync a variable for the comment. Create a variable and sync it to the image. Transfer the downloaded posts to the post class we created and sync with a variable. Add the variable to the post list. Let's update to see new post in Recycler View. Create a options function to see menu operations in common photo sharing activity. Define the function you created as an inflator. Sync the menu file we created. Create an item-selected function to encode what we want to do when the menu is selected. Check the ID of the photo sharing item and create the intent variable. There is no intent file in our code file. Transfer the intent file. Activate the intent variable. Check the ID of the logout item. Log out of the user account when clicking the logout item. Create an intent variable to go back to the main activity after logging out of the account. Start the intent function you created. End public photo sharing activity for data saving. Go to the adapter class we created earlier. We will use Recycler row in the onCreateViewHolder function and show the shared posts to the users. For this we need a Recycler source file. Let's create the design source file. Go to the code section of the generated design file. Set the height to wrap content to take up as much space as needed. Let's use linear layout instead of constraint in our Recycler source file. Create a text to show the sharing user's email address to other users, and set the height to wrap content to take up as much space as needed. Specify an ID to the text. Set the text. Adjust the text size. Set the text margin. Set the text color. As you can see, the written codes are shown to us simultaneously in the design section. Create an image view to show the image that the users post to other users. You can manually adjust the image size by experimenting. Set the image view position. Set the image view margin. To see the photo blank while coding, go to the Design section. Select the image view we created from the left tab, and add a blank image from the src compat property. When the coding part is finished, we will see the blank photo. Set an ID for the image view. Create a text to show the user comment to other users. Set the height to wrap parent to take up as much space as needed. Set the name, size and color of the text. Adjust the margin of the text. Specify the ID to access the text. Click on Linear Layout and add Orientation. Set the orientation setting to vertical. Use the recycler source file we created in the adapter class. Return the view we synchronized with the recycler source file to the post holder class. In the onBindViewHolder function, we will show the user's email, as well as the photo and comment user shared. Let's start with the email. Let's show the user's comment after the email. At the beginning of the video, I said that we will use the Picasso library when adding the libraries. Now let's use the Picasso library we added and show the photos shared by users. In the getItemCount function, we will determine how many shared posts will be shown to users. Let's show the entire post list to users. After making simple adjustments to Firebase, which we use to save the data, we will have finished our project. Let's go to the Firebase website. You can easily go to with the link in the description of the video. Go to Console. Go to your Firebase project that we created at the beginning of the project. Go to Firestore database. We need a database to use in our project. Click the button to create the database. You can select the Europe region as the region. Enable your database. Let's create a collection ourselves here. We will delete this collection later, because we already automatically created this collection at the coding stage. Enter the collection ID. Let's create a post with an email and password. As you can see, posts shared by users will be saved to Firebase in this way. But as I said before, we have already created them automatically with codes. In the example here, I wanted to show how the posts shared by users are saved in Firebase. You can delete the collection. Go to Rules. Here we need permission change. Replace the security false with true. This process can be risky when uploading applications to Google Play Store. But since this is a test project, we can change it to true. Publish our new permission preference. Go to the project and start the project. Enter an email and password and press the register button to register for the application. If you go to the authentication section on the Firebase website, you can see the email account and password you have registered. You can also delete registered users from this tab. Go to User Photo Sharing Activity in the app, click on the photo icon. As you can see, it is asking the user for permission to access the gallery. Allow the application to access photo gallery. Choose a photo and upload it to your app, enter a user comment and click the share button. As you can see, the post you shared in the public activity has been created. This post can also be seen by other users. The post we shared will also be saved in the Firestore database section of the Firebase website. As you can see, the image is saved as a web address. Let's go to the website to see the image we shared. Let's log out of the application and create another user account. As you can see, we can see the post in the other user account. Let's go to the Photo Sharing tab and upload one more photo to our application. When we clicked on the photo icon, it did not ask for permission this time because we had given permission to access the gallery before. Let's share another post. Let's log out of the application account. Let's log into our first account. Note that we use the login button this time when logging into the application account, since we have registered before. As you can see, it was saved to Firebase in the second post. We can see this image by going to the website. In the authentication section, we can see that the other email account we registered is registered. Let's close the application and open the application without logging out of the application account. As you can see, we do not need to enter an email and password again to enter the account, since we have not logged out of the application yet. Let's check the warning messages when we enter the wrong password. I will enter the password incorrectly when logging into the app account. Watch out for toast messages. Let's enter the correct password and make sure that the welcome toast message works when logged into the account. This is how we completed our project. We learned the SQLite data logging method in previous projects. In this lesson, we learned the Firebase data saving method, which is often used when developing Android applications. In addition, we have a better understanding of how recycler view items and activities that are frequently used while developing Android applications are used. Don't forget to develop the project and sync it with your own apps. You can find the source codes of all the projects made on the Turtle Code YouTube channel on the Turtle Code GitHub account. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. You can also support us by subscribing to the Turtle Code YouTube channel and other social media accounts.